Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Mark Givler. Got Kevin Noon with me here today. This will probably not be one of our longer episodes. I guess we'll see how it goes. We're going to do something a little different today with the format, and we just want to get something up quickly on the channel before everything hits the fan here tomorrow. We're doing this. We're recording and running this on Friday. Just want to make sure we get like a little bit of weekend coverage here. We'll have a lot more kind of coming out of the weekend on the website, and then some stuff up here coming out of the weekend as well. Massive visitor weekend. Top prospects, top targets at like every position are going to be on campus this weekend. So we're not going to do the full length preview here. I did record a morning show with Tom Moore, where we talked a little bit about some guys. I've got some stuff on the website now. I've got a written skull session you guys can read. If you want more information on the visitor list, we have the visitor list posted on the BuckeyeHuddle.com for the Huddle Forum presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So you guys can check out the list there, and we'll have updates throughout the weekend. But I want to do two things real quick. The first thing, I want to make our final calls. There's two important recruiting targets deciding here in the next few days that we know of. Just to be clear, two guys who have announcement dates set here for the next few days. The first is Tarvos Alford, top 100 linebacker out of Vero Beach, Florida, is announcing on Saturday. That is tomorrow. Ohio State, Florida, Florida State, Miami. It's basically Ohio State versus the Florida schools at this point. I've had him in the class for a long time. I think Kevin has as well. Kevin, any change on, this is kind of it, speak now or forever hold your peace. Is Alford a Buckeye on Saturday or no?
I think he is. He did get a chance to take a couple last little looks at schools or whatever. Post Ohio State visit, there was the hope that Ohio State would be the last visit. That wasn't necessarily the case, but I think Ohio State has really proven to be the school that had been 1 or 1A, and when the other school parallel to that, Florida, hasn't necessarily been having a ton of great luck as of late. I think that Ohio State will be the choice, and I feel that this one is pretty solid.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Ohio State as well. Again, we've had Alford to Ohio State for a really long time on this. If you're on the site, you kind of know that. Just great relationships there with the coaching staff. I thought, was there maybe a sliver of a chance for a school like Florida to shake things up this winter? Maybe. And then James Laurinaitis was given the permanent linebackers coach role, and I think that kind of threw everything out the window for everyone else. So I would be very surprised, actually, if Alford does not pick Ohio State tomorrow. So I'm sticking with Ohio State there. Another one, a guy we haven't talked about as much just because he's kind of flew below the radar a little bit, but has been a kind of a hot topic here in the last month or two is Texas defensive lineman Landon Rank, 4-star interior defensive lineman. He is announcing on the 3rd of April, and it's basically Ohio State, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. Those are the kind of the big three there. Was just on campus at Ohio State last weekend. I think it was the 19th. Was just at Ohio State about a week ago. Kevin, do the Buckeyes pull a surprise pickup out of Texas? He talks to Larry Johnson every day, Kevin.
I know. Buckeye Nation is everywhere, but the Ohio State campus is not. And I think distance is going to be a factor on this one. And it is with a lot of kids. And especially with your big linemen. I think the bigger the player, the more the mama's boy that they may be or whatever. And that's not, I don't say that in a derogatory sense. I'm smiling as I'm saying it, but I think it's going to be hard to get him away from A&M. I mean, I think Oklahoma could be right there, but I like A&M on that one. But I think Ohio State really gave it its best effort. I think that, people will be disappointed in not landing him, but I'm going to tell people, if Ohio State, in fact, does not land him, it's not because Ohio State didn't do a good job of recruiting him. You can't land them all. And this is, again, this is a kid out of Cypress, Texas, not Chillicothe, Ohio. So sometimes stuff happens.
Yeah, I think he's going to stay home with A&M. He actually went back there this past week, this week, and then about a day later announced his announcement date. So, I mean, smokescreen possibly. I don't think so. I've kind of talked to some people down that way, and my informal poll of people I would trust on this one are telling me it's going to be Texas A&M. We'll see. We will be ready. We will be on call just in case. But right now, I'm expecting Texas A&M. So there's our two upcoming predictions for guys who have announcement dates set. But this weekend is loaded with visitors, so we're going to play an in or out. You know, I usually do this in written format on the website, and it's usually later in the cycle toward closer to signing day. But we're going to play who's in and who's out, basically. If you're familiar with my who's in and who's out column over the years, we're going to, you know, for the purposes of this one, we don't necessarily have to give an answer in terms of if it's like 5 other schools in Ohio State. I'm not holding Kevin to necessarily the other, you know, picking the right school of the rest of the pack. But for listener purposes, because that's all you guys really care about is he a Buckeye or not? I don't know that you guys all that much care about where they're going if they're not going to Ohio State. So we're going to play who's in, who's out on about 10-ish, you know, maybe 11 or 12. I don't know. I've lost count. We got a list here. We're going to go through some of the bigger names here this weekend. And Kevin and I are going to give our answers on if we think they're going to end up at Ohio State or not. Should we start? I don't know, Kevin. Where should we start? Should we start at the top of the? Should we start at the top of the rankings list?
Start at the top of. I mean, this. Or I'm a guest on your show. You choose where you want to go. I'm not. I don't know. I mean, I'm ready. I haven't necessarily done any math. I haven't even done any preparation. Some of these names are going to be coming at me cold, but you know, I have a pretty good instinct as to how things I think are going to go, but until I'm proven wrong.
Well, that's the best way to give an answer is when you don't know, when it's not being served to you on a silver platter. You gotta, we'll get a candid answer. Then we'll get an off the cuff answer. So that'll be the best. Those are the best answers. So yeah, let's start with David Sanders, top ranked player that'll be on campus this weekend. Arguably the best player in the country. I think he's at least one service does have him number 1 overall. I think everyone agrees he's the number 1 offensive tackle in the country. Providence Day in Charlotte. This obviously has to happen. Like, this visit had to happen. He released a top 6. It's basically 5 schools within reasonable driving distance of his home and then Ohio State. So they're a bit of an outlier there. Kevin, David Sanders, Buckeye or no?
Well, I think 6-hour drive. I mean, I've done the drive to Charlotte a million times, as you have. And I mean, it's not the worst drive in the world. I think that when David Sanders announced that he was going to do this visit this upcoming weekend, I think that gave a lot of people a lot of hope. But I also know that I had been telling people that I didn't think this one was going to happen. And visit or no visit, I still don't think this one's going to happen. I'm going to take the field. Once again, people are going to say, well, once again, Ohio State can't recruit the top offensive line prospects, but it also is not. This isn't 2026, and that there's just a multitude of Ohioans that Ohio State should be able to land. So you're having to go into ACC country, you're having to go into the fringe of SEC country and try and pull the arguably top player, certainly at his position, if not in the nation. I think it's going to be just a little too big of an ask. I think Ohio State is going to remain in the mix up until the end, but I certainly would push all my chips in on the field.
Yeah, I'm going to say out as well. I'm just not very bullish on this one. And it's not because of their history with offensive line recruiting. It's not because I think they've done a poor job here. I've been critical of offensive line recruiting when I have felt that they have not done the job they should have with certain guys. I think they've done the job here. Look, he's a high academic kid who is very, very close with his younger siblings, yet Ohio State is the only northern school on his list. I mean, there's no Michigan where his quarterback is going. They've got I think they've got 2 kids going to Michigan from Providence Day in the 25 class. They got a receiver too. They're not on his list. Notre Dame's not on his list. Penn State's not on his list. Like, Ohio State has done something right here to be the outlier on his list. So they're doing something right. I don't think they're there are recruitments in the past I think they have either blown or been overconfident in or mismanaged, misread. Jackson Carman, Rasheed Walker. We can go down the list of these. I don't think that's happening here. I just think geography is going to be too important to David, and he's going to stay closer to home. My pick is Clemson. Not that it matters to anybody, but I think he's going to end up at Clemson. I think Clemson and Georgia are probably the two to watch the closest right now, but I think he'll end up at Clemson. I think he'll end up close to home. Let's move over to the defensive line. London Merritt, top 100 defensive end out of IMG Academy, originally out of Atlanta, Georgia, making another visit to Ohio State this weekend. He is going to also return in June for an official, and we suspect he will make a decision before his senior season starts, but that's still a little bit fluid. Kevin, London Merritt, in or out?
I think he's been to Columbus enough times to where he's approaching having to file taxes here. And this one has always felt really good to me. He goes to IMG from Woodward Academy in Atlanta, South Atlanta. And I think that maybe that might have given people a little bit of pause, but I think Ohio State had already done enough legwork and built enough of a foundation there that, and I'm not saying that IMG has not been okay to Ohio State, but it's not been an automatic by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the work Ohio State has done there and the fact that they're getting him up here this weekend, they've got the official already in place. I like him to be a Buckeye.
Yeah, IMG is like the ultimate melting pot. No one has a stranglehold on IMG. Has Alabama done well there? Yeah, I mean, they have, but they've sent kids all over the country. So it's just, I think some antennas went up. I think the JC Latham thing still has people with some PTSD on guys who maybe they feel good about, who leave their high schools and then end up at IMG. And then, the entire country recruits IMG and just becomes one big melting pot of kids going to other schools and everything else. But I think it's a great culture fit. I think London just embraces everything that Ohio State looks for in a player and a person. He's got a great relationship with Larry Johnson. Again, doesn't need to be up here this weekend. He has seen everything there is to see at Ohio State. I mean, these are just pure trips that he wants to make at this point. This is like 5 or 6, I think, now for him. So great sign. We're coming back in the summer. I think they'll lock it. I think they'll lock this one up at some point toward the end of the summer. Let's stay on the defensive line. Here's an intriguing one. Trenton Wilson, 4-star defensive tackle out of Maryland. He will be on campus this weekend. This is a guy who I think if they could take if they could only take one defensive tackle, which they're obviously hoping to do a little bit better than that this cycle, but if you told them they could only take one defensive tackle this year, I think they would pick Trenton Wilson. That's just my personal opinion, just from talking to people over there. This is a guy who constantly comes up as a guy that is a priority target for them, for Larry Johnson and the defensive staff. Been a lot of talk about him. He hasn't been to campus in quite a bit. Be back on campus here Saturday. Kevin, Trenton Wilson, in or out?
See, this is the first kid that I don't really feel that I have a great read on. I mean, the other names that we've gone through are names that we talk about on shows and in production meetings and just over lunch and things like that. Trenton Wilson, despite how much Ohio State may like him, is not a name that comes to mind. I think that as you move into the interior of either line, offensive or defensive, the less you get talked about. This one's kind of a coin flip, just so I don't pick every kid to be in Ohio State's class. And I know I've said that with David Sanders, that he's not going to be in there. I'm going to say out on this one. And that is based on a coin flip.
I'm also going to say out. So I think Penn State leads right now. So maybe we should redo this on like Tuesday and see if that's still the case. See if we think that's still the case. But I think Penn State leads right now. So if there's a school that I think is clearly in front of Ohio State right now, I have to go out. But this is one of the most important visits of the weekend, I think. I mean, this is a take the temperature visit. This is a like, okay, is he going to Penn State, or is Penn State just doing a good job? And we'll overcome this and we can get him. And, those are the things Ohio State's got to be asking themselves, I think, coming out of this weekend with Trenton Wilson. But I will say out for right now. Let's move a little further back in the defense. Let's go to linebacker. Riley Pettijohn, McKinney, Texas, top 100, I think top 50 player. Another guy, top of the board type of player for Ohio State. One of their favorite linebacker targets. They've definitely put in the work there. Kevin, in or out?
Well, Eli Lee is already in the class, and I've already declared that I believe that Tarvos Alford is going to be in the class. So now we're here with Riley Pettijohn, and I know what happens one year doesn't necessarily act as a predictor as what's going to happen the following year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I do subscribe to the theory that there's always going to be a couple of surprises along the way. And I think Riley Pettijohn can be that surprise. I'm going to say, with no real reason other than I just like it, I'm going to say in. But again, that's just one of these things of where I think that Ohio State is going to pull off one of these upsets, whether or not it is the Devin Sanchez, the effect of Devin Sanchez and what with that, or James Laurinaitis is just going to be able to get in there and just, charm the hell out of them. I'm going to say in, but I mean, hashtag freezing cold takes. I could be way off here.
Devin Sanchez appears to be Mr. Defensive Recruiter, Mr. Texas Recruiter. Again, every time we talk about linebacker, we come back to James Laurinaitis being announced as linebackers coach and how that's helping them with all their targets. So he's out. No, I've got him out. I think they are going to go full. They were absolutely going to go full court press this weekend. I think Texas is the favorite. Here's the interesting part, though. They're in on Riley. They're also in on Elijah Barnes, who they had a good visit with last week. So does something give there on the Texas side of things? Can Texas get all these guys? I think that's a question that maybe needs to be asked at some point, or is Ohio State able to steal like one of these guys out of Texas? And so that'll be interesting to kind of watch. It's another Trenton Wilson type of visit for me. Like, let's get the temperature here. Let's get the real temperature here. But yeah, I'm going to say out for now. Okay, let's move back to the secondary. We've got a lot of guys we can go through here. We'll stick with like the big three, so to speak. Everyone wants to talk about these three, so we'll leave some of the other guys for future updates. Let's start with the guy who currently resides in the state of Ohio, Trey McNutt, Buckeye legacy. Didn't maybe always feel like a priority. Now he does. Goes on all these national trips, visiting Oregon, going all over the country, making some people nervous. Kevin, Trey McNutt, in or out?
Well, since it sounds like we're going to be talking secondary here, I can throw an overreaching statement and say that Ohio State isn't going to be able to take like 9 guys in the secondary. We know that something is going to have to give, and they have 3 corners already. I mean, when you have a guy that could be a corner safety, everybody, if you're a defensive back, you want to play corner. You don't want to play safety. That's where you look at the NFL and where the paychecks are and everything else. So something is going to have to give somewhere. It's not going to be with Trey McNutt, though. He is a Buckeye legacy, and I think when it's all said and done, he will give people a few ulcers along the way, but he will be part of the class, and he will make Daddy Richard happy by playing at his alma mater. Trey McNutt will be a Buckeye.
I've got him in too. I think he certainly wants to do his homework on everything and make sure it's his decision and not a family decision or a pressure decision for staying in state. But I do think things there was a minute, December, January, where I could have maybe seen this get away from them. But Matt Guerrieri's done a great job since taking over for Perry Eliano, and I think Ohio State has certainly clarified how important they think Trey is to them. So I will say Buckeye. That leaves us with another guy, though, Dorian Brew, another former in-state player, I guess, now down in Texas. All sorts of angst there the last few weeks, few months really, since moving to Texas. And I've even said I think Texas has made this a little more interesting than we thought it could get. Kevin, Dorian Brew, in or out?
Before he moved to Texas, this one was 100% done, in my opinion. I think that the move to Texas, despite his mom running track and being a track great at Ohio State, has certainly created some obstacles for Ohio State. And I went all round and round about Ohio State not being able to take 9 defensive backs, but they're going to take at least 6 of them, and one of them will be Dorian Brew. I think this is going to be one, though, that Ohio State is going to have to fight until that fax machine cools down on signing day, and they have that letter of intent in hand, so to speak, and know that that one is completely done. But we did a show several weeks ago, maybe even a little more than a month out, about most important players on the board, defensive side of the ball, and I think that Dorian Brew is one of those guys, and I think that they will be successful largely based on the work of Matt Guerrieri, and you also have to throw in OG Walt in there for just about anything with what Tim Walton has become as a recruiter.
Yep, I've got Dorian in. As I've said on the site, as I've probably said on some podcasts, I do think this got more interesting in the last couple months with Oregon and Texas specifically. Certainly, if he would have stuck with his January decision date, that would have been Ohio State. There's a reason he didn't. I'm more in the boat that it was just wants to make some visits and not, commit somewhere and then go on a bunch of visits and then create a circus. I'm more in the boat that was more of a mature decision than Ohio State did something wrong or something spooked him about Ohio State. I just think he wasn't ready. But I still think, despite the moves Texas and Oregon have made, that when all said and done, he's going to end up at Ohio State. And I think this weekend's going to be interesting. I guess I'll get to that point in a minute because we're going to talk about one more guy here, and I'll get to that. But it's going to be interesting in the secondary. I'll start with that. But let's move on to our last defensive back. We're going to talk about Fahim Delane, arguably the number one safety in the country. If he's not the number one safety in the country, maybe Trey McNutt is. I don't know. There seems to be, I think they're both number one safeties on different sites, if I'm not mistaken. So Fahim Delane, big time program, good counsel in Olney, Maryland. National recruit, LSU, Oregon, basically everybody. I think Fahim could probably go to any school he wants. Also Virginia Tech, where his brother plays. Kevin, Fahim Delane, in or out?
I felt that this thing was like coming to a head quickly, and then it slowed down. And it wasn't that Fahim said anything of where it was coming together quickly, like I want to make a decision like yesterday. I just felt that everything was trending in the right direction. And then as time goes on, then doubt starts to creep in a little bit. Why is this taking so long? And again, I'm going to reiterate, he never sat there and threw a date out there and then backed off of it. None of that has been there, but it's just, you get that feeling, you do this long enough and you're like, this seems like it's going to happen. And now here we are, March 29th, the day that we're recording this and posting this, and it hasn't happened yet. So you kind of look and see what else is out there in terms of where else he's looking and what the messaging is. And he's saying all the right things about these other schools. But I think that this is going to be a good year for Ohio State and the state of Maryland. And while I didn't put Trenton Wilson in the class, I do think that they will get Fahim Delane, get to 6 defensive backs, kind of sort everything else out at that point. I know that there's some concerns by some people Okay, Naeem Offord is in the class. Does that ride all the way through? Alabama's just not going to sit there and say, sure, take one of the best players out of our state and go. So I like Fahim Delane to end up in the class. And then, on the 7th day, we all rested and we kind of waited to see what the board looked like.
I have had Fahim in, so I'm going to stay with that. I'm not quite sure why there was so much buzz. I think it's part of the crystal ball thing. I think when 3 or 4 predictions come in or whatever, I think people assume that something must be coming immediately. And oftentimes that's not the case. Fahim's been pretty consistent. He's going to take officials. So like you said, Fahim never indicated to anyone that he was close to deciding, but nonetheless, there was a lot of, buzz there. I don't think he's going to decide this weekend or coming out of it. We'll see. But I suspect he's going to take his June officials. Again, I look at a lot of these guys as summer decisions. I think he'll be one of them, but I like where Ohio State's at. So I've got him in. I'll go glass. I've got like 2 thoughts on this whole thing. My first one's kind of glass half empty. And that is what happens. So they've got, I've said this before. I was not the first time I've said this, but what happens to potential defensive back number 6 when they've got 5 committed? Like what happens when 2 of these guys commit and now you're the 6th guy? Like, does that change things? Because we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen at different positions. We've seen it happen at receiver a lot. Like Brian Hartline goes and gets 2 or 3 5-star receivers, and then the guy we all think is going to be the 4th one doesn't end up here because it doesn't make sense for him. So will that happen here is one thing I kind of want to keep an eye on as I have them leading for the 3 guys we've talked about. That being said, what I think they're going to try and do this weekend is sit those guys down and be like, look, we got 3 corners committed. Trey, you're a safety. Fahim, you're a safety. Dorian, you're like a hybrid. Let's just end this. Why don't you 3 all commit and we're done? That's it. We want you 3 with the 3 we have, and that is going to be that. That's it. And we're done recruiting defensive backs. Now, you and I know that's not super realistic. You and I know that doesn't, just because they would, even if they would all be like, yes, let's all do this, and 6 defensive back commits. You and I know that's not going to stop Virginia Tech, LSU, and Oregon from recruiting Fahim Delane. We know it's not going to stop Alabama and Auburn from recruiting Offord. We know it's not going to stop Texas A&M from recruiting Devin Sanchez. So we know you're still going to have to play defense the rest of the cycle. But I think that's going to be the pitch, is like Ohio State's going to sit these guys down and say, look, we don't want to have to expand our board any further. We would like this to just be the class. And we'll see if that hits home with some of these guys. I think it might hit home with 1 or 2 of them. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. I think all these guys will probably be guys who set announcement dates rather than just like on Sunday, throw something up on Twitter randomly. So we'll see if there's any movement coming out this weekend, but I think that's going to be the message. So,
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, going in before they took a single defensive back commitment, if you said 3.5 corners, 2.5 safeties, and that's putting, Dorian as a half and half type of situation, that's not out of the realm of anybody's numbers. I mean, those are numbers of need that you have there. Now, the fact that all 6 of these guys are high-end 4 stars into 5-star range, I mean, maybe that's a little bit different, but I've said this until I'm blue in the face. Elite competition, competitors don't fear elite competition. So you could be, oh no, I'm number 90 in the nation. I'm not the highest rated guy in the class, but they got that wrong. They're wrong. I'm the guy. And there's so much more portability now with the portal and everything else that if you come here for a year, you get your NIL, you get trained up by Walt or Gary, and you command the market if it doesn't work out. But nobody's thinking about that next step at this point. I mean, it seems like a real pain in the butt to sit there and be like, well, I'll go somewhere and then I'll go somewhere else. You're already accepting failure at the first spot, and none of these guys will be failures, in my opinion, at the collegiate level. I mean, Ohio State has zeroed in on some of the best kids nationally, and I think that all 6 of them, at least at some point in time, all 6 of them will be committed at the same time. Do they sign all 6 of them? Stay tuned.
So that's I think that's it for the defensive side, but we're going to flip back. I know we did David Sanders earlier. We're going to flip back to the offensive side. Oh, gosh. Both are so intriguing, both these positions. Let's go with Let's start with running backs because there's 2 guys expected this weekend. We talked about it earlier in the week. It looks, we'll cross fingers, I guess, until, we see him on Saturday at Student Appreciation Day and practice. But it appears Jordan Davison will, as we kind of reported early in the week, come to Ohio State after his Michigan visit, and he'll be on campus, expected to be on campus Saturday. Boy, is there a lot we won't unpack that whole situation here. We've done that already on other podcasts, but Tony Alford gone. He goes to visit him at Michigan. And instead of spending, 5 days in Columbus, it's not going to quite be that. It's, spends a lot of time in Michigan, spends a little bit of time in Columbus. Yet he is coming. We think. So let's assume that he does. Let's assume that he makes it. In or out, Kevin?
This is one I've thought about, and I go back and forth, but this is what it keeps coming back down to. If you truly believe Ohio State led at one point, why do you feel Ohio State led? Was it solely the relationship with Tony Alford? Was it what Ohio State is? Is it the history of what running backs are? Is it the offense? I mean, what is it? I think we can all agree that Ohio State hit a spike strip along the way with the loss of Tony Alford. Ohio State, as of the time that we're recording this, does not have a running backs coach. And I'm not teasing that something is imminent in the next couple of hours. I'm just saying at the time that we're recording this, they don't have a running backs coach. But I still think that there will be the opportunity with him on campus to fall back in love with all the things that put Ohio State 1 or 1A. Here I am with 1 and 1A, with Texas maybe being the other program that stands out at top. So as long as Ohio State needs this thing to go on further, Ohio State needs this to go on into the summer, maybe even into the fall. Ohio State doesn't land Mater Dei kids. It is what it is. Mater Dei's in Santa Ana, California. Ohio State is in Columbus, Ohio. It's been umpteen million years since Nikki Sualua. All these reasons why I should say no, but I'm not. I'm going to say that they're going to get him based on the fact that Ohio State had climbed to the top of the mountain at one point, in my opinion, and it's not like any of the facilities have gone away. It's not like that the offense has dramatically changed or anything else. It's a business. Coaches come and go. And even if he had the greatest relationship with Tony Alford, Ohio State is going to bring in a running backs coach. And even if the relationship is 10% less or 15% less, I still think Ohio State crosses the finish line.
I absolutely hate flip-flopping, and I've kind of been leading the Jordan Davison to Ohio State charge the last 6 months. I'm going to say out right now. I think the Alford departure was such a jolt, was so jarring. Not just him leaving suddenly, but where he went. I think if you're a recruit, you're like, wait a minute, you're telling me how great this school is, and you just went to their arch rival, like in the middle of spring practice. What in the world is going on there? And so I think that was such a jolt. I mean, I'll be honest. If Tony Alford was Ohio State's running backs coach today, I thought there was a very good chance Jordan Davison was going to commit to Ohio State coming out of this visit. This was a business trip. This was like his second long visit scheduled on the books with Ohio State. I thought there was a very real chance that he might commit in the short term coming out of this visit, and certainly propel Ohio State even further in the driver's seat. Right now, Texas Alabama, all are giddy this happened. I don't know for sure how much Michigan's involved at this point. I think the Alford thing's going to help them to an extent. Obviously, he made a visit there. I think there's a lot that has to happen still with Michigan. I think obviously he's got to get way more comfortable with that program. I think, this isn't a Michigan sanctions episode, but what's going to happen with the NCAA and then over the next 6 months, we don't know. Yeah, you think, but you never know. So I'm going to say out for now, and maybe I'll revise that after talking to Jordan after this weekend and kind of see where his head's at. But I do agree with one thing you said. I think now this needs to be kind of a 6 months out decision would help Ohio State. Whereas before Alford left, I would have thought the sooner he decides, the better for Ohio State. So I do think things have switched on that front. But I'm going to say out for right now. All right. One more running back, though, to talk about this weekend. Bo Jackson, offered by Auburn recently. So, how can you turn that down? And my goodness, I'm sure there'd be some NIL type stuff they could do with that. But Bo Jackson back on campus this weekend out of Cleveland, Ohio. One of my favorite players in the class nationally and in Ohio, just a tremendous talent. Kevin, with all the turmoil, in or out?
Well, not to piggyback off of a recent episode of the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, but be sure to go onto the channel and find it. I think you really nailed everything in talking about how maybe the change in the running back room has maybe changed some of the priorities of how the running backs are viewed. And I think that Ohio State is going to redouble its efforts on landing Bo Jackson. And I think it's going to happen. He's an in-state kid. And yes, Ohio State lands the vast majority of the in-state players that it wants to land. That is not, that's not really up for debate. Jordan Marshall did get away, but you can make arguments as to how did Ohio State view the board that year. But I think Bo Jackson certainly is there at the top of the board, and I think that you need to get him in pocket right now and have that one done with. And doesn't mean that they're not going to have to play defense, but I think that you push for that commitment. And I'm not saying that I'm expecting him to be committed in the next 7 days, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State really does push hard, that we could see some serious ground covered.
As one source told me this week, Ohio State is going to take a very big swing this weekend at Bo Jackson. So I've got him in, and I'm with you. Do I know for sure it's going to happen in the next week or two? No. Would it stun me if he was one of the next couple of guys to commit? No. This is a guy I know Ryan Day really likes. It was nice that Michigan had him up on a visit last week, but that's not going to change the circumstances of the last 6 months, which is that at any point in the last 6 months, Tony Alford could have told Bo Jackson that he's his top guy, and he doesn't have to recruit Jordan Davison or Byron Lewis or all these other out-of-state guys he's chasing. And I want you as my top guy in this class. That never happened. So now that you're at Michigan, that's not going to be able to happen. These kids aren't dumb. I think Ohio State's in a tremendous position, just knowing how much Ryan Day likes Bo Jackson, knowing what an OSU guy Jackson was growing up. And now that things have shifted around, I think this makes a lot of sense for everybody. And I think I've had Bo Jackson in the class one way or another. I always thought Ryan Day would push this over the top for Ohio State. We've seen that happen with head coaches over position coaches in the past, where
he's the running backs coach right now.
And he is the running backs coach right now. But we've seen Urban Meyer step in and be like, no, you're taking this kid. I've always felt Ryan Day was going to kind of use his status or whatever to get this pushed through. But now it doesn't. There's really nothing to discuss at this point. So I've got him in. I tend to think sooner rather than later, but we'll see how that goes. Now, everyone's favorite position, the wide receiver position, and gosh, there's probably 7 guys we could talk about. I'm going to
We were
try and
worried
keep
how
it.
long the show was going to go, and
I know it's gone longer than we thought. I know. There's like 7 receivers we could talk about. I'm going to limit this to 1, 2. I'm going to limit this to 4.
I'll try to be more concise and not as word vomit.
I'm going to limit this to 4.
All right.
Yeah. Let's start with the elephant in the room. Jamie French, in or out, Kevin?
And I just think that when he decommitted,
Next.
and lightning round. I just think that when he decommitted from Alabama, when all the change happened there, I think that he really liked Ohio State, and Ohio State was probably just this far behind. I don't think anything has necessarily changed at Ohio State. If anything, it's with the decommitment of Jevin Boggs. I mean, they don't have anybody there now. So that wasn't, I mean, Boggs wasn't going to scare French away. I mean, let's just be honest. And Boggs is a hell of a player, but, Jamie French is just kind of on a little bit of a different level. Sorry, Jevin, if you're watching, you're a good guy, but Jamie is very, very refined in his skills, and I like Ohio State to make that one happen.
I agree. I have him in, and I've had him in basically since he decommitted to Alabama, so I'm not changing anything there. The only thing I would add to kind of what you said is whether he commits soon or not, this will not be stress-free between now and December. This will be a heated national battle. So if you couldn't stomach the Jeremiah Smith thing last year, then, come see us in December. I don't know. You're going to want to sit this one out, I think. But I think it's going to be one of those. I think it's going to be one of those. But I think they're going to get him. Just great relationship with Heartline. It's going to be so easy now to go back to these South Florida Express guys after what we're about to see on the field this fall with 3 South Florida Express guys in the top, 4 receivers for the Buckeyes. And just, I think we're going to look in December and they're going to, you're going to have 3 South Florida Express guys who catch 40, 50 balls this year. Maybe 1 or 2 of them have 1,000-yard seasons. Like, you get to come in behind those guys, but not so close to them that, you're going to sit for 3 years. Like it's going to work out, I think, very well for Ohio State South Florida Express, which leads us into our next one, which is Vernell Brown, who I freaking love. And I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I came back from the Under Armour camp in Florida. I said, the idea that this is like a top 300-ish, like a borderline top 300 kid is completely insane. And I think since then, at least one site's moved him into their top 50, which is where he should be. He's an absolute freak. He's not 6'3", but everything else is ridiculous. Speed, hands, route running, strength. So, Kevin, South Florida Express, 2 for 2, in or out?
Well, I think part of the problem is when you get put into a database as an athlete and you don't have a position, and it's hard to sit there and have a top 50 player as an athlete, because if they're just that damn good, you should be able to identify what their position is. Well, guess what? His position is wide receiver, and he's damn good at it. And I feel like I've been just rubber stamping in. But here we go again, in. He's going to be in. It's going to be that South Florida Express tie. And that's not to say that every South Florida Express kid goes to Ohio State, but if you're a receiver and play for South Florida Express, you have a really good shot at going to Ohio State. Ohio State loves him. He really loves Ohio State. I think this is an important visit just to try and get some things put together and everything else. But I really like this one, and I'm looking forward to following his high school career, because I mean, he was somebody that 6 months ago I wasn't really that aware of, and now he deservedly is getting the respect that he needs.
All right. Now we're going to come to a couple more difficult ones, I think. Talon Taylor, Chicago area receiver, top 100 prospect, big-time talent, quiet kid, does not give you much at all. If you're lucky, if you get to anything out of him information-wise, doesn't do a ton of the interviews, doesn't do a lot on social, quietly Ohio State's valued him very highly, thought very highly of him. He's going to make it in this weekend. Regional guy, receiver, in or out. I mean, hey, this Heartline, this is Heartline on a Midwest receiver, right? What could go wrong?
I know. We can look at Mylan Graham. We can look at some of these guys, and betting against Brian Hartline in region is crazy. It's crazy to do that because you look at, he can pretty much go just about anywhere and pull a kid from there. And for a kid that's, 2 states over in Illinois, and to be able to land him and everything else, but I don't have enough information on where this one is. And I'm going to be crazy and I'm going to say out just because I have not heard enough buzz to convince me otherwise. It doesn't mean that I don't think, if Brian Hartline really turns it on and everything else, sure. I don't like betting against him, but I look at the receiver board and where they're standing and everything else, and I'm going to say out.
I'm also going to say out. I think Georgia got out in front on this one. So I think that's what they're dealing with right now. They certainly could make a move this way. This goes into like the Trenton Wilson, like Riley Pettijohn type visits of like, okay, let's really get the temperature here. So I may have a different take on this in a week, but right now I think Georgia's in front, so I'm going to say out for that reason. And then again, we'll see how this weekend goes. Last one of the entire episode. So I did lie. This went about as long as our episodes always go.
Even longer.
But okay. 4-star wide receiver, Mission Viejo, California, Philip Bell. Kevin, return visit from a California guy, in or out?
Well, Mission Viejo is not modern day. They're relatively close geographically. We're in my hood now. Mission Viejo High School was in my league when I was in high school. So not anymore. They change that stuff all the time. But I know I'm very familiar with Mission Viejo. This just feels like a Brian Hartline special to me. This one just really feels like it. And there are other names of kids that are not coming on campus this weekend that, you have to kind of wonder. But whereas with the previous player, I just haven't heard enough buzz to convince me that they're going to be able to pull that one. Can't say I've heard a ton more buzz on Philip Bell, but I'm going to say in just because this one feels like this is a Heartline special right there, and he's not going against the 900-pound dragon, which is landing a kid from modern day. Mission Viejo is a little bit of a different beast, but if you put my feet to the fire and it's like, why exactly are you picking this one? I don't know. I just am. So I am.
Man, I thought I was going to buck the trend here. I'm
Sorry,
also.
We didn't pre-show. We didn't pre-show.
I thought, boy, Kevin's never going to say in on this one. I'm going to say in on this one. I'm going to say in. I think the Boggs decommitment makes this more feasible. When you had Boggs, and then we shouldn't assume this, but you kind of like have French and Brown as guys you think they're going to get. And now you're at 3 already, and it's like DeCorian Moore is still out there. Talon Taylor's still out there. All these other receivers are still out there.
Is still out there. Yeah.
Khalil Lockett is still out there. Exactly. Now it's like, well, you're starting from scratch. Why couldn't you take, you're going to take 4 receivers in this class. I think you're going to have to, after only getting 2 last year. I think you're going to have to take 4. So even if you just, even if you give them, which again, I think is probably a little too generous right now, we're confident they're going to get Jamie French and Vernell Brown. So that's, even if you give them those guys, still only 2. You're not counting DeCorian Moore. Like at this point, you're not counting Khalil Lockett at this point. You're not counting those guys at this point. You could absolutely take Philip Bell right now. And still, it wouldn't alter any of your other plans. It wouldn't prevent you from recruiting anybody else. You could keep moving business as usual. And so for that reason, I think he's in. This is a multi-time visitor now from California. They've flown out to California to see him a couple times. This is a kid they're very serious about. I think fits the Boggs type of mold. I mean, he's a bigger body. Like they're both, neither one of those guys is like 6'3". I think Boggs is about 6 foot. Bell's maybe an inch taller, but they're very sturdy, like 200-pound receiver, like big receivers, and can kind of play in the slot, can play a little bit of everywhere. I think Bell would be a natural replacement for Boggs in the class. So I'm going to go a little bit off the cuff here. And yeah, this will be maybe my surprise of the show. I don't know, but I'm going to say in for Philip Bell. So yeah, I'm surprised we're both saying in. I thought that'd be the one. I thought I'd be different on that one, but so we're both getting the same kind of vibes there.
I have an 84-man class for Ohio State, by the way. They're getting everybody.
Yeah. They're getting they're going to sign a 50-man class apparently after the show. But I thought we were pretty. I didn't think we were bad. I thought I was conservative to an extent. I mean, I didn't give him any of the question marks. Like I didn't give him any of the guys. I was like, 50. Like I didn't do any of that. I really only gave him the guys I'm pretty highly confident in at this point, other than maybe Philip Bell there at the end. But I don't know. I thought I played it pretty straight.
My big flyer was my on defense was my big flyer.
Yeah. I thought I played it pretty straight up. So we'll see. Big weekend. Join us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Subscribe to the channel here at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. We may have a little spring sale coming, so keep an eye on that. And don't worry if you get in the meantime and we offer a spring sale, we'll hook you up. But just be on the lookout for that. I'm going to be dropping a spring sale here on subscriptions to the website here pretty soon. So check that out. But in the meantime, follow us here. Podcast platform of choice at Apple, iTunes, Spotify, whatever you guys use. Find us there. 5-star rating helps other people find us. But sorry, this went a little longer than we anticipated, but I think it was fun. I think people enjoy the different format. But again, hope you enjoyed it. Appreciate everyone watching. Appreciate everyone listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.